Hi everyone, welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at the latest stories making headlines this hour. Iran President Ebrahim Raisi warns that his country will destroy Tel Aviv and Haifa at the slightest Israeli action, demands that extra-regional and American forces leave the region at the earliest. Detained U.S. journalist Evan Gershkovich denied bail by a Russian court. Gershkovich made his first public court appearance since his arrest, appealing against pre-trial detention. Moscow summons top diplomats of the U.S., Britain, and Canada, alleging interference in Russia's internal affairs. Sweden's Absolute Vodka announces end of all exports to Russia. This after calls to boycott the brand flared up in Sweden and on social media. And the champions lose again. The Golden State Warriors go 2-0 down in a playoff series for the first time. In the Stephen Curry era, the Sacramento Kings take the charge of the first round tie. All right, let's start you off here in New York, where U.S. officials have arrested two men in New York for allegedly operating a secret Chinese police station. New York residents 62-year-old Lu Jian Wang and 59-year-old Chen Xinping face charges of acting as agents of the Chinese government and obstruction of justice. The two were produced in a Brooklyn federal court on Monday. They were released on a bond later that day. U.S. prosecutors said the accused set up a secret police station at the behest of the Fuzhou branch of the Ministry of Public Security, which is China's national police force. The station was allegedly closed in the fall of 2022. U.S. officials said that the main job of the accused was to help track down and harass dissidents from China. Officials said that they also admitted to the FBI that they had destroyed evidence of their communications with Chinese officials.
Unlike typical officers, the MPS officers who have been charged today are not focused on preventing crime. Rather, the complaints charge these MPS officers with engaging in transnational repression schemes targeting members of the Chinese diaspora community in New York City and elsewhere in the United States. And as shown in these complaints, the MPS has repeatedly and flagrantly violated our nation's sovereignty, including by opening and operating a police station in the middle of New York City.
Reacting on this, David Newman, the U.S. Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General for National Security, said that the efforts of the People's Republic of China's government to export authoritarian methods to stifle free expression in the United States is a threat to American democracy that will not abide. On Monday, prosecutors also unveiled another set of charges against 34 Chinese officials. They are accused of operating what is called a troll farm and harassing dissidents online by disrupting meetings on U.S. technology platforms. But what exactly is a troll farm? A troll farm is an organized group of individuals on the internet trolling people with an aim to disrupt an online community. Troll farms conduct disinformation propaganda campaigns by creating fake social media profiles to target a particular community. Now, all the 34 accused of creating this troll farm are in hiding. As per the charges, the troll farm had created thousands of fake social media accounts to target Chinese dissidents through online harassment and threats.
These kind of behaviors should not be tolerated. It's about our sovereignty. It's about our way of life. It's about our freedom. In America, people should not be fearful of speaking their mind, whether it be the critical views of our own government or any foreign government for that matter. The abrasiveness and their willingness to take that kind of actions on American soil is bone-chilling.
For more on this, we are being joined by Mr. Frederick Fleitz from Washington, D.C. He is the vice chairman of America First Policy Institute Center for American Security and a former NSC chief staff. Thank you so much, Fred, for joining us once again on WION, and welcome to the program. What do you make of these recent arrests by the DOJ, notably regarding these two individuals who set up what is being called a police station in the heart of New York City's Chinatown?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. This is more than just an unfriendly act by China. This is a brazen violation of American sovereignty, of our diplomatic agreements with China. But what it really indicates is that China does not care about the norms of modern civilized society. And when we talk about China's plans for a new global order, China's been pretty blunt that new global order will not have modern perceptions of freedom of the press, free speech, freedom of religion. That's what China is pushing, and it's just appalling that China is pushing repression outside of its borders in the United States.
And what's interesting is that the DOJ, the Biden's DOJ, decided to crack down on these individuals because they were spying on Chinese dissidents. However, we know that China has a history of also spying on Americans time and again. You just had the Chinese balloon incident. You have incidents of these cell towers, mobile towers all across the United States, buying land here in the United States, Chinese officials doing that time and again. How has the United States responded to these violations and these acts, in your opinion?
Well, you're right. There are a long list of incidents that are violations of American sovereignty. They're far more than unfriendly acts. It's not just being done to the United States. It's being done to India and many other American allies also. I don't think the Biden administration has responded strongly enough to these incidents. We know that President Biden let that giant spy balloon fly across the entire United States before he shot it down. And I understand that the administration does not want to make relations worse with China. But I think tolerating situations like this and not responding strongly enough emboldens China to engage in more activity like this.
Right, domestically and internationally as well. Mr. Frederick Fleitz, thank you so much for joining us on WION, and we look forward to having you again very soon.
Good to hear.
It's been 3 years since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what remains a mystery is its origins, how it was transferred to humans. Did it come from a wet market or was it manufactured inside a lab? Now, a U.S. Senate report has concluded that the pandemic most likely came from a lab leak. The claim comes in a 300-page document, and it finds that COVID was the result of a quote-unquote research-related incident in Wuhan. It further states that the theory that COVID-19 jumped from animals to humans in a market no longer deserves the presumption of accuracy. The 300-page report released to Axios was the full version of a 36-page summary published in October by the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. The report argued that Chinese researchers appeared to begin development of the least two COVID vaccines at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in November of 2019. Meaning the COVID virus would have been present at the lab before the known outbreak of the pandemic. The claims gives further credence to the lab leak theory, supporting accusations that China covered up early cases of the outbreak. The report does not, however, offer a definitive conclusion on the origins of the pandemic. It said that more information is needed to arrive at a more precise, if not a definitive, understanding of the origins of the virus. Foreign ministers from the Group of Seven Nations condemned Russia's recent talk of stationing nuclear weapons in Belarus as being, quote unquote, unacceptable. They also hit out at China and called on Beijing to act as a responsible member of the international community. The dual issues of Russia's military intervention and fears of similar action by China against Taiwan were the key focus for the gathering. Japan, Britain, US, Canada, Germany, Italy, France, and the EU promised to continue intensifying sanctions against Russia. Diplomats also vowed to increase efforts to respond to those offering Moscow arms or other support, warning of severe costs. They also slammed Russia's irresponsible nuclear rhetoric. The G7 highlighted that any use of chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons by Russia would be met with consequences. Last month, Putin said that Russia would station shorter-range so-called tactical nuclear weapons on the territory of its neighbor, Belarus. Moscow says that this move was forced upon it by the expansion of NATO and its military alliance towards Russia's borders. It was the first time that Russia had said that it would station nuclear weapons on the territory of another country since the end of the Cold War 3 decades ago. Putin's move appeared to raise the stakes, at least symbolically, in an intensifying standoff with the West over the war in Ukraine. The G7 statement made clear that the ministers were mindful of the furor caused by Emmanuel Macron's China comments. Last week, the French president said, quote, Europe should avoid crises that aren't ours. The final statement said that there is no change in the basic position of the G7 members on Taiwan. G7 underlined that peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait are indispensable to global security and prosperity. Meanwhile, French foreign minister and her counterparts sought throughout the G7 talks to play down differences. And without directly mentioning China, the group pledged to step up cooperation against economic coercion. Now, remember, economic coercion is the practice of weaponizing imports or export rules for political purposes. Beijing hit back and said that the G7 nations in Japan maliciously slandered and smeared it. The foreign ministry said that the G7 statement is full of arrogance, prejudice, and sinister intent to oppose and suppress China. G7 foreign ministers demanded North Korea refrain from further nuclear tests and ballistic missile launches as well. Their warning came just days after Pyongyang said that it had successfully tested a solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile. The talks set the stage for a G7 leaders summit next month in Hiroshima. At the leaders summit, Japan's prime minister wants to make nuclear disarmament a key plank of discussions. G7 urged countries to document their nuclear arsenals, urged Russia to stick with a moratorium on testing, and called on China to hold risk reduction talks with Washington. The meeting was held under tight security after Japan's prime minister escaped unharmed on Saturday when an explosive device was thrown towards him. China intends to reunite Taiwan even if it requires force. Recently leaked U.S. intel documents say that Taiwan is little prepared to fend off an attack, however, if Beijing decides to launch one. Arms imported from the West seem to be an answer. Here's more.
To thwart Beijing's belligerence, Taipei is relying on support from the U.S. A recent report says Taiwan will buy as many as 400 anti-ship missiles from the U.S. The purchase of land-launched Harpoon missiles comes in the backdrop of a rising threat from China. The Pentagon announced a $1.17 billion contract on the 7th of April without naming the buyer. Production is expected to be complete by March 2029. China has firmly opposed any such transfer.
US-Taiwan military ties and US arms sales to Taiwan seriously violate the One China principle and the Three China-US joint communiques, especially the provisions of the August 17 communique on arms sales to Taiwan. It seriously damages China's sovereignty and security interests and seriously threatens peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. China is strongly dissatisfied and firmly opposes this.
The Harpoon anti-ship missile is a subsonic cruise missile that's been in service since 1977. It's an all-weather, over-the-horizon anti-ship missile system with a range of anywhere between 90 to 240 kilometers. It is capable of a low-level sea-skimming cruise trajectory equipped with anti-radar guidance and has a 221-kilogram heavy penetration blast warhead. Tensions with China are on the rise, and Taiwan looks to arm itself for possibly grim war clouds ahead. US President Joe Biden has vowed to defend Taiwan against any aggression. But in the case of an invasion, the main question is, can Taiwan defend itself? And for that, how many weapons does it really need to at least slow down an assault before help can arrive? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Fighting between the army and paramilitaries in Sudan has killed close to 200 people and wounded at least 1,800. The hospitals have been damaged in urban warfare, and efforts have been hampered over the weekend. A week-long power struggle exploded into deadly violence between the forces of two generals who seized power in a 2021 coup. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with two generals leading warring forces in Sudan and underscored the urgency of reaching a ceasefire. Blinken also confirmed a U.S. diplomatic convoy had been fired upon on Monday, though those inside were unharmed in what he called a reckless act. The smoke from fires triggered by the fighting hangs in the air. Residents of the capital are spending the last and holiest days of Ramadan watching tanks roll through the streets and building shake. The conflict has seen airstrikes, artillery, and heavy gunfire. Those compelled to venture out face queues for bread and petrol at outlets which are not shuttered. Residents are also dealing with power outages. The official doctors union warned fighting had heavily damaged multiple hospitals in Khartoum and other cities. Some hospitals are completely out of service. WHO had already warned that Khartoum hospitals tending to wounded civilians have run out of blood transfusion equipment and also fluids and key supplies. Remember, 3 UN World Food Program staff were also among those killed in Darfur on Saturday. A number of organizations have also temporarily suspended operations in the country where 1/3 of the population needs aid. The Gulf Emirate Qatar spoke to African Union Commission head who is planning to immediately undertake a ceasefire mission. There are no more civilian flights arriving in Khartoum where fighting has damaged aircrafts. Meanwhile, some analysts have flagged the risk of Sudan turning into a fragmented state.
السيناريو المتشائم هو أن تستمر معارك الكر والفر لأسابيع وأشهر ويتحول السودان إلى بلد يعني متفتت. تظهر على الساحة أيضا التنظيمات المسلحة والميليشيات المسلحة اللي بعضها له قواعد في الخرطوم.
Reports suggest around 30 Indians are stuck in Sudan. India's Ministry of External Affairs has set up a control room to provide information and assistance. Elon Musk is again sounding warning bells on the dangers of artificial intelligence to humanity in an apparent challenge to ChatGPT, the popular chatbot from OpenAI. The Twitter owner says that he will launch a platform that he calls Truth GPT. Recently, Elon Musk, AI experts, and the industry executives called for a 6-month pause in making systems, that are more powerful than OpenAI's newly launched GPT-4. In an interview with Fox News' Tucker Carlson, Musk said that Truth GPT will be a maximum truth-seeking AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe. Musk said that the idea is that an AI that wants to understand humanity is less likely to destroy it.
We're going to start something which I know you could call truth GBT, or a maximum truth-seeking AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe. And I think this might be the best path to safety, in the sense that an AI that cares about understanding the universe it is unlikely to annihilate humans, because we are an interesting part of the universe, hopefully.
Last month, Musk registered a firm named XAI Corp, incorporated in Nevada. The firm listed Musk as a sole director and Jared Burchell, the managing director of Musk's family office, as a secretary. He tweeted over the weekend that he had met Barack Obama when the latter was U.S. president, and told him that Washington needed to encourage AI regulation.
AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance, or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction.
Musk co-founded OpenAI in 2015, but he stepped down from the company's board in 2018. In 2019, he tweeted that he left OpenAI because he had to focus on Tesla and SpaceX. In January, Microsoft announced a further investment in OpenAI, intensifying competition with Google and fueling the race to attract AI funding in Silicon Valley.